This past weekend, online threats leveled at Niagara's acting medical officer of health caught the interest of the Prime Minister, who hit Twitter to express his disappointment at the treatment of Dr. Mustafa Hirji. Dawn Zinga is a professor of child and youth studies from Brock University. She's here to share her expertise on cyberbullying. Welcome to the program, Dawn.
Thank you for having me.
This cyber attack against a public servant. He's not an elected official, but a public servant who has been in the spotlight for over 11 months now. It was really, really kind of brutal this weekend.
That would be a good description of what happened.
Don, when I look at some of the comments from last weekend, these are the kinds of things that we heard. I can't even repeat them verbatim because of this forum, but words like "he has to go now by any means necessary," including force, and people calling for his head on a stick. These were really brutal attacks.
Yes, and so pointed threats of bodily harm would be a police matter, and I understand the police have been involved as they should be. When you mention cyberbullying, this kind of attack isn't the usual form of cyberbullying we see, where people hide behind false identities or screen names that can't be tracked. Most of the individuals had no problem with their identity being known, which can be quite disturbing. It indicates they saw no problem with the statements that they were making, that they were communicating in a way they saw was acceptable.
The fact that someone like Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, Doug Ford, the Premier, we also had other politicians not even linked to Niagara, Catherine McKenna. We had our area MPs, MPPs chiming in, the Ontario Medical Association area mayors. It was really taken seriously.
It was, which is really nice to see, because when something like this happens in the public discourse, it's really up to other players in that discourse to indicate that it's inappropriate. So, legal matters can be settled in court and in police, but when you're looking at inappropriate discourse, it really needs to be called. And there was that call for civility. So not a call for silencing, but a call for critiques or criticisms to be expressed appropriately in that kind of a public forum.
There's really a big difference between calling somebody names and making these threats, isn't there?
Yes, so I would argue that even name calling would be an inappropriate communication, but you're certainly taking it to a different level with the threats that were issued over the weekend.
Why do so many people these days feel empowered using social media to be outspoken like that?
Social media has always had that element. So even though people are identified, because they're not face-to-face, they feel like they still have some kind of shielding in many ways. So psychologically, they feel like they're more protected, even though it's still out in the public. And Dr. Hirji should be really praised for the way that he handled things, because he stuck to really appropriate messaging. He didn't try to shut down the criticisms, and he just called for more civil engagement, which is what you really want to see in that kind of forum. The other piece that's specific to COVID, which is an area I've been doing research in with colleague Dr. Molnar more recently, is that the pandemic seems to be making people feel like they can express things in more extreme ways. And we're tying that down to whether or not they can appreciate the greater good, or whether they have a more mentality that's focused on the impacts of themselves and not really taking into account the broader community.
Could it also be a factor that they're not able to get together at the coffee shop, or not able to gather at the food court at the mall and gripe about some of the things that are bothering them on the political scene?
It's possible that they've been using social media, even in closed groups, to do that. And now it's spilling over to more open groups because they don't have that other outlet.
The fact that the police did get involved in this is a big reminder to people to watch what they do say online, don't you think?
Yes, it is a good reminder. And I think it also sends a good message to youth that adults are also held accountable for the things that they do and say online.
That's a great point. Again, child and youth studies, as a person involved in that, you know that you have to set those good examples. Thanks so much for joining us, Dawn. It's Dawn Zinga from Brock University. Thank you.
Thanks so much.